Burn the files. Right now. General Harrison's frantic scream echoed through the secret room on the third floor of the Pentagon. Bob Mitchell clutched the red file in his hands tightly. In his 20-year military career, he had never been in the middle of such a big secret. The inscription on the file reading, Operation Red Dawn, Maximum Secrecy, had opened the door to one of America's darkest secrets. But what he learned that night wasn't just an operation. It was the documents of the greatest betrayal that people sitting in the highest offices of his own country had planned against their citizens. Everything started on March 15, 2019. Bob Mitchell was doing his routine duty at the Pentagon. The experienced colonel working as a Middle East analyst in the Military Intelligence Service had come to his office at 7:30 as usual that morning. While preparing his coffee, he noticed the urgent mission instruction waiting on his desk. The instruction was signed by Director Williams and contained only 3 words, General Directorate immediately. When Bob entered the director's office, Williams wasn't alone in the room. 3 more people were sitting around the table. He knew them all, General Harrison, Colonel Thomas, and CIA Coordinator Sarah Blake. But the expression on their faces showed that this meeting was far from routine. "Mitchell," said Director Williams in a cold voice, "you have Persian language skills and Afghanistan experience. You've been selected for a special mission." Bob's heart started racing. He had served 3 tours in Afghanistan between 2011 to 2014. His language skills were perfect. But why such a secret meeting? General Harrison stood up. "Colonel Mitchell, what I'm about to tell you will not leave this room. No records will be kept. This conversation never happened." Bob nodded. Such instructions were normal in military life. But the concern in the general's eyes revealed that this situation was far from normal. Operation Red Dawn began CIA Coordinator Sarah Blake, a secret project that has been ongoing since 2015 with a total budget of $2.8 billion. It never appears in official records. Congress approval was not obtained. Only 23 people at the highest level know about it. Dozens of questions crossed Bob's mind. How could a $2.8 billion operation remain secret? How could such a budget be spent without Congress's knowledge? But before he could voice his questions, General Harrison continued speaking. "Mitchell, this operation is critically important for America's security. Emergency measures taken against the increasing terrorist threat in the Middle East. Your mission is to coordinate the final phase of the operation." Colonel Thomas placed a map on the table. The map marked the borders of Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, and Iran. But what caught attention was that there were also marked points on America's own territory outside these countries. There were red dots in Detroit, Chicago, New York, and Los Angeles. "What are these markers?" asked Bob. The silence in the room was disturbing. Sarah Blake answered, "Local coordination centers of Operation Red Dawn. Stations established to track potential risk elements within America against the terrorist threat." Bob was confused. Intelligence operations within America were prohibited. This was the FBI's job. Military intelligence could only work abroad. But before he could ask his questions, Director Williams spoke. "Mitchell, this operation is within the scope of special measures taken after September 11th. You don't need to know the details. You just need to carry out the mission given to you." That night when Bob returned home, he had dozens of questions in his mind. He wanted to learn more about Operation Red Dawn. The next morning, he entered the secure archive at the Pentagon. His security card provided him with a 7-level access. But he couldn't find any files about Operation Red Dawn. For 3 days, he searched different databases. Finally, he found traces in an old computer system among deleted files. The file name was RS 2015 Domestic Classified. RS was the abbreviation for Red Shadow, which was Red Dawn. But the word domestic had disturbed him. Domestic meant within the country. When he opened the file, what he saw shocked him. Operation Red Dawn was indeed a program targeting Muslim communities within America. Mosques, community centers, student associations were being systematically monitored. But the most shocking part was learning that this monitoring wasn't just for security purposes. There was a section titled Social Engineering in the program file. This section described strategies like creating chaos within Muslim communities, turning different groups against each other, and supporting extremist views. The goal was to keep these communities under control and frame them as guilty when necessary. Bob's hands began to tremble. This wasn't just intelligence gathering. This was a psychological warfare operation against their own citizens. It was an illegal program that violated the First Amendment of the Constitution, aiming to restrict religious freedom. When he examined the file more deeply, the dimensions of the operation reached horrifying proportions. In the last 5 years, 156 Muslim families in 47 different cities had been monitored under terrorism suspicion. Most of these families were on the list simply because they participated in normal worship activities at mosques. Even more shocking was discovering that some families had been subjected to provocateur activities. Within the scope of the operation, specially trained agents approached these families, trying to direct them toward radical ideas. If they succeeded, these people would be arrested and brought to trial on terrorism charges. Bob remembered the thwarted terror plots, news that appeared in the media between 2016 to 2018. The headlines were always the same: FBI prevents terrorist attack at the last minute. But now he was seeing the truth. These attacks were setups planned by government agents. The financial aspect of the operation was also horrifying. Documents showing how the $2.8 billion budget was spent were terrifying. $800 million had been used for infiltration and manipulation of Muslim communities in America. $400 million for fake evidence production and media manipulation. $600 million for special courts and torture centers. Yes, torture centers. Within the scope of Operation Red Dawn, secret detention centers had been established in 12 different states of America. In these centers, civilian citizens arrested as terrorism suspects were held for months without any legal process. Bob's heart started beating rapidly. The documents he held were evidence of crimes America had committed against its own citizens. This wasn't just lawlessness. This meant democracy was being fundamentally shaken. The next day, Bob gathered his courage and went to General Harrison's office. Behind the closed door, he heard the general talking on the phone. "Yes, Mitchell has started asking questions about the operation." "Yes, I know. But if we silence him, it will raise suspicion. Maybe it would be better to draw him deeper into the operation." Bob knocked lightly on the door. General Harrison said, "Come in." When Bob entered, the general had a calm expression on his face. He acted as if he hadn't just been discussing Bob's elimination. "Ah, Mitchell. Good. It's time to give you more information about Operation Red Dawn." The general stood up and took out another file from his cabinet. "This is the second phase of the operation. Code name, Cleansing. The cleansing file froze Bob's blood. In this phase, 78 people marked as dangerous in the first phase of Operation Red Dawn would be killed by arranging accidents. Car accidents, deaths disguised as suicides, killings during robberies. Separate plans had been made for each person. "General, this is murder," Bob stammered. General Harrison's expression hardened. "Colonel Mitchell, this is a national security matter. These 78 people pose a potential threat to America. We can't stop them through legal means because they haven't committed crimes yet. But when they do, it will be too late. But these are innocent people. Most of them just normally worship at mosques." "Enough." General Harrison slammed his fist on the table. "Colonel Mitchell, either you become part of this operation or—" He didn't complete his sentence, but the meaning was very clear. That night, when Bob returned home, he couldn't tell his wife Linda anything. His daughter Sarah had called from university, wanting to talk to her father. But Bob wasn't in a condition to answer the phone. The documents in his hand were evidence of the genocide America was planning against its own citizens. The next morning, when Bob went to the Pentagon, someone was waiting for him in his office. CIA Coordinator Sarah Blake was sitting at Bob's desk, doing something on his computer. "Good morning, Colonel Mitchell," said Blake in a cold voice. "We noticed interesting searches were made on your computer system last night. An attempt to gather unauthorized information about Operation Red Dawn was detected." Bob's mouth went dry. "I was just doing my duty." "Colonel Mitchell," Blake interrupted, "you now need to make a decision between two options. Either you will be completely part of this operation, or the alternative will be much more painful." Sarah Blake showed Bob the documents she had extracted from his computer. "Look what we found on your computer. Child pornography, attempts to communicate with terrorist organizations trying to sell state secrets. There's enough evidence for all of these." Bob was shocked. "These are fake evidence. You planted them. Can you prove it?" Blake smiled. "Computer records show that these files were downloaded from your computer last week. Also, there are interesting movements in your bank records. Suspicious money transfers from Russia." Bob now understood he was trapped. If he refused to be part of Operation Red Dawn, he would be brought to trial on false charges. But if he accepted, he would cause the death of innocent people. "You have 24 hours to think," said Blake. "You need to make a decision tomorrow morning. Either you become the head coordinator of the operation or, well, you know the alternative." Bob couldn't sleep that night. He thought until morning. He had served the American Army for 20 years. He loved his country. But now he was being forced to be part of an operation that would kill innocent people in the name of his country. In the early morning hours, he talked to his wife, Linda. "Linda, if something happens to us, keep these documents in a safe place." He gave his wife a special USB drive. The information inside is very important. It needs to be announced to the world when necessary. Linda saw the fear in her husband's eyes. "Bob, what's happening? Tell me." "I can't tell you. But if something happens to me, take this USB to the Washington Post. Call reporter Michael Thompson. Tell him it's from Bob Mitchell." Bob went to the Pentagon having made his decision. He entered Sarah Blake's office. "I'll be part of the operation," he said. Blake smiled. "Smart decision, Colonel Mitchell. Now let's start the real work." Blake explained the full details of the operation to Bob. The first target was Imam Rahman Abdullah, the Muslim community leader in Detroit. Abdullah was a religious leader who worked for social peace and had even cooperated with the FBI. But in Operation Red Dawn's file, he was marked as having high radicalization potential. "How will Abdullah be killed?" asked Bob. "Car accident. Classic method. It doesn't raise suspicion and compensation can be paid to his family. It eases consciences." Blake's cold approach made Bob shudder. The next week, Bob flew to Detroit. He met with the operation team there. The team leader was Agent Thompson from the CIA. Thompson had been monitoring Abdullah's movements for days. The Imam left his house at 7:30 every morning and went to the mosque. He used the same route. April 25, 2019, Thursday morning. Bob was waiting on Detroit's 8th Street. At 7:28, Abdullah's car appeared. At that moment, Bob had a great conflict in his heart. He could stop and warn Abdullah. But then his own life would be in danger too. At 7:31, the truck driven by Agent Thompson crashed into Abdullah's car from the side. The accident was so severe that Abdullah died instantly. The official report stated that the truck driver had a heart attack and lost control of the steering wheel. Agent Thompson was taken to the hospital with fake identity documents and disappeared 3 days later under treatment. Bob attended Abdullah's funeral. The Imam's wife and 3 children would never know why their husband/father had died. At the funeral ceremony, 1,000 people bid farewell to Abdullah. Everyone remembered him as a peaceful religious leader who was loved and respected. The second name on Operation Red Dawn's death list was lawyer Amina Hassan in Chicago. Hassan worked for the legal rights of Muslim immigrants. She especially handled cases of Muslim youth who were unjustly detained for free. For this reason, she had been labeled as anti-system. Hassan's death was planned differently. A robbery would be arranged at her home, and she would be accidentally killed while resisting. Bob met with the operation team in Chicago. The team leader was former police officer Mike Rogers. Rogers was a person connected to criminal organizations who took bribes. He had been specially selected for the operation. "Hassan works late in her office every Tuesday night," said Rogers. "The security guard leaves at 10. She's alone in the building. Perfect opportunity." May 3, 2019, Tuesday evening. Bob was coordinating the operation in Chicago. At 22:30, Rogers and his team entered Hassan's office. According to the plan, they would kill Hassan during the robbery and take a few valuable items. This way, the incident would be closed as a simple robbery. But something went wrong. Hassan wasn't alone in the office. Her assistant Clara Martinez was also working late. Rogers and his team had to kill 2 people. The official report stated that they were killed by armed robbers. Bob also attended Hassan's funeral. The lawyer's husband was trying to understand why his wife had been killed. Amina never harmed anyone. She was just fighting for justice. At the funeral ceremony, dozens of immigrant families that Hassan had defended were present. They all said their lawyer was a hero. The third target of Operation Red Dawn was teacher Yusuf al-Mansouri in New York. Al-Mansouri taught American history to high school students. However, he was accused of anti-American propaganda because he objectively addressed America's Middle East policies in his classes. Al-Mansouri's death was planned to be disguised as suicide. The teacher would supposedly have become depressed, feared being fired from his job, and taken his own life. Bob met with the operation team in New York. The team leader was psychological operations specialist Dr. Lisa Kim. "We'll first psychologically break down Al Mansouri," said Dr. Kim. "Pressure at work, family problems at home, financial difficulties. After a while, he'll really become depressed. Then it's easy to make him commit suicide." Starting from May 15, 2019, systematic psychological pressure was applied to Al Mansouri. The school principal constantly warned the teacher. Students, supposedly directed by their families, complained about the teacher's classes. Neighborhood residents spread rumors that Al Mansouri was dangerous. At the same time, mysterious problems began in the teacher's bank account. Credit card debts suddenly increased. Home loan payments were rejected. His wife Sarah also had problems at her workplace. Her boss fired her on the grounds of security investigation. 2 months later, Al Mansouri really fell into depression. When he went to the doctor gave him strong antidepressant medications. Of course, the teacher didn't know that these medications were specially prepared by Dr. Kim. Instead of improving depression, these drugs increased suicidal thoughts. June 20, 2019, Thursday morning. Al Mansouri jumped from the roof of his house. A suicide note written in his own handwriting was found next to him. The note said, "I can't stand this pressure anymore. It's time to end my life." Of course, this letter had been specially prepared by Dr. Kim. Al Mansouri's handwriting was imitated, and the reason for suicide was explained. Police closed the case as suicide due to depression. No one knew that the teacher had actually been systematically killed. When Bob attended Al Mansouri's funeral, he felt great pain in his heart. The teacher's 16-year-old daughter was trying to understand why her father had committed suicide. "My father was a very strong person. Why did he do such a thing?" she asked. After these 3 murders, Bob could no longer bear it. The documents in his hand were evidence of war crimes America had committed against its own citizens. But Bob knew it wasn't possible to get out of the operation. By that point, he had already become guilty of the murders he had personally organized. On July 1, 2019, Sarah Blake called Bob for a new mission. "Colonel Mitchell, congratulations. The second phase of the operation has been successfully completed. Now it's time to move to the third phase." The third phase was called Great Cleansing. In this phase, all major Muslim organizations in America would be targeted. CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations, ISNA, Islamic Society of North America, and other major organizations would be declared terrorist organizations. According to the Great Cleansing Plan, a total of 1,247 people in these organizations would be detained. All of them would be brought to trial on terrorism charges with pre-prepared fake evidence. These people would be tried in secret courts, and no one would provide them with lawyers. The most shocking thing was that this operation would be carried out on legal grounds. The Operation Red Dawn team would submit a special emergency bill to Congress. This law would put all Muslim organizations in the suspicious category on the grounds of terrorist threat. When Bob read the draft of the law, he was horrified. The law would target not only Muslims, but everyone who supported them. Muslim lawyers, journalists, activists, and even academics would fall under the scope of this law. Even worse, within the scope of Great Cleansing, temporary security camps would be established in America. These camps would officially be for rehabilitating terrorism suspects. But when Bob examined the camp plans, he understood that these were not rehabilitation but concentration camps. A total of 12 camps would be established in the Nevada desert, Montana mountains, and isolated areas of Alaska. Each camp would have a capacity of 5,000 people. The camps would be surrounded by barbed wire, guard towers, and armed security personnel. No one would be able to enter or leave the camps without permission. When Bob examined the internal plans of the camps, the scene became even more horrifying. There were interrogation rooms inside the camps. These rooms were specially designed for torture. Soundproof walls, special lighting systems, and equipment necessary for advanced interrogation techniques. Another section of the camps was called re-education centers. In these centers, people in the camp would be subjected to mandatory classes to learn American values. In the classes, Islam would be presented as a terror ideology, and people would be forced to deny their own religion. The most shocking thing was that part of the camps was designed for the final solution. In these sections, people who didn't comply with the rehabilitation program would be eliminated. In other words, to put it clearly, they would be killed. When Bob examined the financial aspect of the operation more deeply, he learned where this money came from. The $2.8 billion budget of Operation Red Dawn was covered from the black budgets of various government departments without Congress's knowledge. $800 million from the Pentagon, $600 million from the CIA, $400 million from the FBI, and $300 million from the NSA had been transferred. These transfers were made under the name of emergency security expenses. No records were kept, no audits were conducted. Even more interesting was that part of this money had gone to private companies. The private security company, Blackwater Securities, had received $400 million for the construction of camps. The psychological warfare company, Cognitive Systems Incorporated, had received $200 million for brainwashing programs. On July 15, 2019, Bob was called to an unexpected meeting. This time the meeting would be held not at the Pentagon, but at CIA's Langley headquarters. The participants in the meeting were the highest-level coordinators of the operation, CIA Director William Casey, FBI Director Robert Mueller, and NSA Director Keith Alexander. At the meeting, approval was given for the final phase of the operation. The final phase was called America's Cleansing from Islam. In this phase, not only organizations but the entire Muslim population in America would be targeted. "Gentlemen," said CIA Director Casey, "it's time to make a historic decision for America's security. The measures we've taken since 9/11 are not enough. A radical solution is needed." FBI Director Mueller nodded. "According to the intelligence we have, 73% of the Muslim population in America are potential terror sympathizers. This rate is unacceptable." NSA Director Alexander put demographic maps in front of Bob. "Look, Mitchell, the distribution of Muslim population in America. A total of 3.3 million people. 200,000 in Michigan, 400,000 in New York, 500,000 in California, 300,000 in Texas." Casey continued speaking. "These numbers are unacceptable for America's security. In the final phase of Operation Red Dawn, 80% of this population will be removed from America. The remaining 20% will be kept under strict control." Bob's blood ran cold. "How will you remove 3 million people?" "There are various methods," said Mueller in a cold voice. "Voluntary migration, forced migration, and other methods." Bob knew very well what other methods meant. It meant mass massacre. Alexander showed the operation's timeline. "We'll start on August 1st. The first target will be Muslim communities in Michigan. 100,000 people in Dearborn City will be taken to temporary camps for security reasons. Then communities in New York, California, and Texas. Total operation duration is 6 months. By the beginning of 2020, the Muslim problem in America will be completely solved." Casey added, "Of course, this operation will be presented as emergency measures taken against terrorist threat. The media will broadcast the news we've prepared. Public opinion will support this operation." Bob learned the details of media manipulation. CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, and other major media organizations would say that the operation was necessary for America's security. Prepared terrorist attack, news would convince public opinion about the operation. The most shocking thing was that these terrorist attacks would be fake. The operation team would organize fake bomb attacks in various cities. These attacks would be shown as if they were carried out by Muslim terrorists. Thus, public opinion would feel great anger against Muslims. The plans were very detailed. Fake attacks would be organized at a shopping center in Chicago, a movie theater in New York, and near a school in Los Angeles. 20 to 30 people would be killed in each attack. The attackers would be introduced as radicalized Muslim youth. Bob learned who the organizers of these attacks would be. Operation Red Dawn Special Team, the group called Black Eagles, would manage these fake attacks. The group leader was former Navy SEAL Commander Mark Johnson. The Black Eagles group consisted of 23 people. They were all former Special Forces members. The group had carried out various black operations in the last 5 years. Killing opposition leaders abroad, intelligence gathering, sabotage activities. But now, they would operate within America for the first time. Johnson gave his group a special briefing. "Gentlemen, this operation is critical for America's future. We won't stop until the Muslim threat is over." Bob secretly visited the Black Eagles group's training camp. At a secret facility near Camp David, group members were receiving urban warfare training. Various attack scenarios were being rehearsed in fake buildings. At the training camp, group members weren't just learning attack techniques. They were also receiving psychological warfare training. Post-attack statements to be given to the media, suspects to be arrested, and methods to convince public opinion were being taught. Johnson told group members, "Remember, we're not just carrying out attacks. We're also shaping America's future. Each attack will cause public awareness against the Muslim threat." While listening to these words, Bob saw how America was turning into a fascist state, killing their own citizens, then blaming other citizens. This was no different from the methods used by Nazi Germany. The first fake attack would be carried out in Chicago on August 15, 2019. The target was the large shopping center, Magnificent Mile, on Michigan Avenue. The attack would be organized on Friday evening at the busiest hour. The plan was as follows. The Black Eagles group would place bombs at various points in the shopping center. Then, the prepared fake character, Muslim terrorist, Ahmed Hassan, would blow himself up with a bomb. Of course, the real Ahmed Hassan had been killed days before the operation, and his identity had been stolen. After the attack, police would announce that Ahmed Hassan was a radicalized Muslim terrorist. The media would write that Hassan had connections to Islamic State. Public opinion would feel great anger against Muslims with this attack. Bob saw the list of people who would be killed in the attack. 31 people would really be killed under the name of fake attack. Among them were an 8-year-old child, a pregnant woman, and an elderly couple. All would be sacrificed in the name of America's security. When he saw this list, Bob no longer had the strength to endure. He had served his country for 20 years. But now, the same country was planning to kill its own citizens. And Bob had become part of this plan. That night, when Bob returned home, he told his wife Linda everything. "Linda, I've become a monster. I've killed innocent people. And now I'm about to kill even more." Linda saw the hopelessness in her husband's eyes. "Bob, isn't there anything you can do? Isn't there a way to stop this operation?" "There is," said Bob. He showed the USB drive in his hand. "This contains all the documents. Everything. All the details of Operation Red Dawn. If this information gets to the media, the operation will stop. But I'll be killed too. Not just me, but you too, Sarah too. Everyone who knows about this operation will be killed." Linda took her husband's hand. "Bob, if this operation continues, thousands of innocent people will die. You can stop this." Bob didn't sleep that night. He thought until morning. He knew he could stop this operation by risking his own life and his family's lives. But if he did nothing, thousands of innocent people would die. At 6 o'clock in the morning, Bob made his decision. He took the USB drive and went to the Washington Post office. He met with reporter Michael Thompson. "Thompson, you have America's biggest scandal in your hands. But the moment you publish this, you'll become a target too." Thompson examined the documents on the USB. "God, is this real?" "Unfortunately, yes. And the first fake attack will start on August 15th. If you don't publish this news today, 31 people will be killed." Thompson immediately ran to his editor. At 1400 hours, a big news story appeared on the Washington Post website. Leaked documents from Pentagon. Secret genocide plan against Muslims in America. The news had a bomb effect. Within an hour, all world media had made the Washington Post's news their headline. CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, Deutsche Welle. Everyone was talking about Operation Red Dawn. The White House, in its first statement, described the news as a conspiracy theory. But the documents were too detailed. Signatures, seals, photos, audio recordings. Nothing could be denied. At 1800 hours, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez demanded an emergency Congress session. If these documents are true, it means democracy is over in America. An investigation must be opened immediately. At 2000 hours, the New York Times published a second big news story. A journalist had interviewed Bob Mitchell. "I served my country for 20 years. But now this country has become an enemy to its own citizens." The next day, the FBI raided Bob Mitchell's house. But Bob had already left the house with his wife and daughter. They were trying to escape to the Canadian border. They were caught at the border. Bob was arrested on charges of revealing state secrets and treason. The same day, a major cleaning began at the Pentagon. General Harrison, Director Williams, Colonel Thomas, and 47 members of the operation were arrested. CIA Director Casey resigned. FBI Director Mueller retired due to health problems. Operation Red Dawn was officially canceled. Prepared fake attacks were stopped. The Black Eagles group was disbanded. American society was shocked to learn of the existence of this operation. Congress established a special commission to investigate all details of the operation. The commission chairman was Senator Bernie Sanders. This operation is the greatest crime committed against America's values. Those responsible must be brought to justice. After a 6-month investigation, the commission report was published. The report declared that the operation was an attempted coup against American democracy. 234 people who participated in the operation were brought to trial on various charges. Bob Mitchell made his defense in court. Yes, I revealed state secrets. But I did this because I love my homeland. The real traitors are those who planned to kill innocent citizens. The court sentenced Bob Mitchell to 5 years in prison for revealing state secrets. But at the same time, it reduced his sentence to 2 years on the grounds of patriotism. Bob served 18 months in federal prison. Other members of Operation Red Dawn received heavy sentences. General Harrison was sentenced to life imprisonment for treason. CIA Coordinator Sarah Blake received a 25-year prison sentence. Members of the Black Eagles group received sentences ranging from 15 to 20 years. Most importantly, justice was achieved for the 3 people killed during the operation. The families of Imam Rahman Abdullah, lawyer Amina Hassan, and teacher Yusuf al-Mansuri won a total of $50 million in compensation from the government. Bob Mitchell was released from prison in 2021. He wrote a book, Operation Red Dawn, America's Dark Secrets. The book reached #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. Now, Bob Mitchell lives his life in retirement. He occasionally gives conferences at universities. He tells young people that the price of democracy is eternal vigilance. This operation taught me that, says Bob Mitchell, if state power is left uncontrolled, it can be used against its own citizens. Our duty is to stop such operations and protect democracy. Operation Red Dawn went down in history as America's biggest internal security scandal. But thanks to Bob Mitchell's courage, thousands of innocent people were saved from death. And America once again remembered the value of democracy. Tonight, Bob Mitchell told you the truth. All the details of Operation Red Dawn. The genocide America planned against its own citizens. And one man struggled to stop this operation. Perhaps this story will remind you how precious democracy is. Perhaps it will show you that even one person can make great changes. Bob Mitchell saved the lives of millions of innocents by risking his own life. And today, democracy is still alive in America.